Hey guys, my name is Brandon and welcome to or welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you like what you see in here, you're more than welcome to hit the subscribe button so you stay notified every time I upload a new video. Okay, let's get straight on with today's video. Hey everyone and welcome back to Is That More Brandon. So in today's video I'm going to be doing a review to the third episode of the Traitors series 2. So it's getting really intense. I mean, it was very intense after the first episode anyway, but it's getting even more intense because there's now only 19 people left in the game. We started with 22, we've already got 19, and we're just about to lose someone else in episode 4, so we'll then have 18. So, at the beginning of episode 3, Ash basically said, happy murdering, because obviously the traitors at this point were going to decide which was the next person that they were obviously going to remove from the game. Anthony, Charlie, Paul and Andrew, I think, had a little chat together. And I think Anthony said he was going to have a good night's sleep with his shield, so obviously he knew he wasn't going to be removed from the game. And Anthony and Diane had a chat, and he basically said at breakfast to her that he needed to have a proper chat with her today and kind of just clear the air from, you know, where they started off, I believe. And she said to the camera, I don't trust Anthony, but I think she kind of said she'll give him the time of day, she'll have that open conversation with him, but she just doesn't like him and she just doesn't trust him. And then obviously Diane kind of mentioned obviously her reaction to Sonia going was obviously not great, and Paul basically just looked straight at her and said, well, why did you cheer? Like, why were you kind of happy that one of the faithfuls, one of the good people was gone? Surely that's only something that the traitors are going to do. Charlie, so she is the mental health practitioner or manager or something like that. She spoke to Miles, Brian and Harry, and I think she basically explained that it's obviously going to be quiet at the round table, because obviously, you know, you've just lost someone from the game and who knows who's going to say what. And Andrew basically said to Paul that someone had said that him and Diane seemed like mother and son. I think because they both got red, or like dark reddish kind of hair. So she was kind of just a bit like, oh, right, okay. Well, actually, no, I don't think Diane knew at this point. I think Paul basically was just like, what? Someone thinks that's my mum? Like, so yeah, that was kind of that. So in terms of the next part of the show, we found out that obviously Ash, Ross, Johnny and Kyra hadn't come back from to breakfast, so from the night before, and obviously one of the 4 of them was going to get eliminated. We then found out Ash, Ross and Johnny all came back to breakfast. It was Kyra that didn't come back, so obviously it was Kyra that was eliminated from the game. She was obviously murdered that night. And Andrew basically said that obviously the traitors felt pressured or threatened by her, and Charlotte said that, you know, potentially it could have been Johnny that was murdered because obviously he was quite forceful at the table. But yeah, Kyra didn't come back, so she was the second person to lose her place in the game. The traitors then had a little discussion. We kind of saw what they discussed about the previous night. Paul said that she is the biggest voice in the room, and you know, you have to take that out of the game. You want to keep the quiet ones in, but then sometimes not always, so you kind of had to just have a game plan. Yeah, get rid of her, she's the loudest voice, she's probably the one that can have the most, I guess, people following her and, you know, that kind of thing. And she basically said that maybe she was a little bit too outspoken, she should have tried to balance her loudness and quietness, and she said she just wanted to be authentic, and that's exactly what she did. So I think she did do very well there. Shame she got eliminated, but she was just being herself, she was just obviously a loud character. Ross also said that he felt like the Faithfuls lost an asset, so the fact that the traitors got rid of an asset from the Faithfuls team was obviously a very smart move, but obviously just not a good move for them because they've obviously lost someone good in their team. And the next mission, Claudia basically said, hopefully there's no clutching at straws, so that was kind of the hint of the next game. Straws relating to scarecrows or kind of, you know, nature and fields and that kind of thing. And she asked the people to get into 3 teams, so two teams of 6 and a team of 7. And Paul basically said, as a traitor, he feels like he is naturally taking the lead a little bit, but he wants to make things happen how he wants them to happen. So, you know, he's kind of aware he's got 3 other traitors that he's got to befriend and he's got to be allies with and that kind of thing. But at the same time, if there are going to be decisions that are made, he needs to make sure that he's happy with that decision for it to kind of be validated. And then Charlotte basically explained to Harry it was a bit of a hot mess last night. Harry said to some of the girls that he felt like there's potentially a target with the young people, so maybe they're going after the young people in the game. And I think Jasmine basically said here, I don't think that is the case. I think people are just going after whoever they think is a traitor. And Charlotte kind of agreed and said, yeah, Harry, you've got nothing to worry about, everyone likes you. And Charlie explained to him, don't let the traitors win. So he's sitting there with 3 faithfuls as a traitor, and he's basically said that he's going to try and put on his faithful hat and, you know, play the game as if he is a faithful, and then obviously do the naughty, like getting rid of people stuff, obviously when he has to. Tracy then was digging into auras, so obviously she's kind of like the spiritual lady, and she was with Anthony, Ash, Diane, so she was just basically talking to them. I think she had a quick chat with Anthony, kind of telling him about what she saw of him, saying that, you know, she felt like he was high energy, there was something in his life that was taking her back to his childhood, and whatever he's gone through has made him the man that he is today. And she basically said to the camera that she does not trust Ash at all, that she is suspicious, and she doesn't trust her at all. And Ash basically explained that she couldn't relax in front of Tracy, because again, she's kind of coming up with all these weird assumptions and things, and Ash is just like, I don't really know how to be. Obviously she didn't say that to Tracy, she said that to the camera about Tracy. Diane obviously then received the news that Paul was supposedly her son. I think Ross, her actual son, explained that. And she was like, yeah, Paul couldn't be my son, but Ross is. And as soon as she said that, I got the tingles, because I was like, oh my God, she actually does look a bit like Ross. So yeah, Ross, the videographer guy, is actually Diane's son. And obviously you saw the little clips of the 2 of them coming to the game together, and he basically said, oh, well, I'm gonna have to get used to calling you Diane. Obviously I can't call you Mum. Imagine if he slips up and is just like, Mum, oh, sorry, Diane. So that'll be, hopefully that doesn't happen. Hopefully they do keep it secret all the way till the end. So let's see how far that goes. And then Ross basically explained that obviously they're a team, they need to keep their relationship secret. And I think what they can probably do here, because she's older, she can go and network with all the older ones, he can network with all the younger ones, and then they can kind of make sure that they're in conversations together, although they're at least within the same proximity, and then work out who they do and don't like, who they think is a bit suspicious, who they think isn't, and get rid of them people from the game. And Diane said to Zach, that apparently someone had said that her and Paul look like mother and son, and whether it was him or whether someone told him or he told someone else. And then Zach was like, oh, well, who's been going around telling my little thing? I think she phrased it as in like, oh, someone said that my son is apparently in the game, and he was like, oh, who's been telling you that? So that kind of was just a bit of like Zach realised, oh goodness, maybe I shouldn't be trusting some of the people I'm talking to, because they're obviously going and telling other people my business. And then for the next mission, so the Scarecrow game was literally questions with answers. So there was 3 questions, 2 answers, 1 correct, 1 incorrect. If they got the question correct by picking up the Scarecrow and the key putting itself in the lock and it opened, then they could go on to the next question. If it was the wrong answer, had to go back and get the other Scarecrow with the other key. And there was also 3 shields available in the field, but I'll explain that later on. Jasmine said that obviously she wanted to have a shield, and she basically had deserved it after everything she had done so far. I just think the fact that she was getting involved and, you know, trying to make connections and trying to network and things like that, all of them, I believe, are probably deserving of a shield, but, you know, she feels like she is. So let's see if she got one later. And then obviously we had Team Red, Team Yellow, Team Blue. I didn't write who's on which team because there's just too many people at the moment. I'm going to wait for it to whittle down a little bit first, and then if there's any team games, I'll make a note. But the first question was, who out of all of the players is most likely to believe a theory, Zach or Tracy? So Tracy is the spiritual kind of person, and Zach obviously isn't. Both red team and blue team voted for Zach, yellow team voted for Tracy, and the actual answer was Zach. So he believes in these theories, and obviously she believes in like the spirits and things. So I don't know if the 2 things are linked, like if they both believe in the same things or if they're both believing in different things. And he said, I'm not sure how that information got out. People may think I'm stupid. And then, yeah, obviously Charlotte was on the team Yellow, who obviously didn't go for Zach, and they basically had to go and get the other Scarecrow because the answer wasn't Tracy. The second question was, who is the biggest sheep out of everyone in the game? So either Brian or Molly. Brian we haven't really heard much from. Molly we haven't heard much from, but obviously we know Brian's the photographer and Molly is the model. All 3 teams went for Molly, and she said that she's not ashamed, she's been quiet her whole life, and she's now ready to stand her ground. And then when she found out the answer wasn't her, she was like, oh my God, I'm very happy it wasn't me. Like, I'm sad it was Brian, but I'm happy it wasn't me. And he basically said, at the round table, everyone followed the crowd. There was no one person that kind of stuck out as being like shy or whatever, so they don't know, he doesn't know why people voted for him. He said he's a little bit upset and a little bit annoyed that he was voted the biggest sheep. And then the third and final question actually involved a traitor. So who is the most popular in the game so far, Paul or Johnny? So again, Johnny, that's the ex-military guy. Paul, traitor, redhead. Both yellow and red went for Paul. Blue team went for Johnny. Correct answer was Paul. And Johnny just said it's nice to be up there with Paul, to be honest. And the reason why he's, I guess, a little bit reserved, or, you know, doesn't really talk to people as much or reveal as much things, is because he just does not trust anybody in the game, and absolutely rightly so, because you don't know who is genuinely being nice to you, or who's genuinely being nice, or who's being nice to you to just get information out of you. So yeah. And then at the end of those questions, all of the teams had to go to a field, and I think there was a like a catchphrase or something on the sheet of paper saying, in order to get the gold, you need to find the heart of stone or something like that. So obviously there was a whole field of scarecrows, and if they wanted to get the gold, which was I think 1,000 per gold, they could they had to go to the scarecrow with the heart. So they had to obviously rip the scarecrows open to find the heart, to then find the gold. And then it said something like, in order to find the shields, I'm wearing a hat. So scarecrows with the hearts, you'd find the gold. Scarecrows with the hats, 3 shields available. So I think right at the beginning, Zach was like, right, let's all go for the ones without the hats, because they're the ones where we're going to obviously find the gold. And then, yeah, Jazz basically said it was really freaky. And Zach, midway through the games, obviously they're starting to win money and all the teams are like running around the scarecrows without hats. He just said, I'm going to go and get a shield. And I think Charlotte heard him. So he's run, grabbed a shield and was like, well, hang on, he's not really part of the team. He's kind of just, he just contradicted himself. He said he wasn't going to get a shield, and now he has. And then, yeah, Jasmine also was just ripping the scarecrows open. She didn't even realise that the scarecrows with the hats were going to be shields. So she also ended up getting herself a shield. And they passed the challenge and got an extra £8,000 added to the prize pot. So again, Claudia said, those who got a shield, if you want to reveal, just let the team know. Both Zach and Jasmine said, yeah, I got a shield. In terms of the next part, so Ash basically said that she felt like Brian couldn't be a traitor, and she wanted to see what other people are thinking. So she was kind of just putting some very vague opinions out there because she just wanted to see what other people were thinking, and explained that she wanted to play the game like a faithful. Brian said to Evie that Molly came up to him and said that they were both the sheep. So I guess maybe just teasing him that the fact that they're not the least popular, but the most nervous or shy or whatever. And Paul basically explained that he felt the most popular people... oh, hang on, this is the round table. Is this the round table? Is this the round table? No, it's not. No. I'm gonna have to cut that out, sorry. Yeah, Paul basically explained to the camera that he felt like the most popular people in the game were starting to go, so he was going to start looking at the quieter contributors. It seemed like the loud ones were just kind of sitting back, waiting, and then yeah, the quieter ones were obviously I guess the mischievous ones in the middle. Diane said it would obviously be quite smart to make someone who's quiet a traitor, and she's fairly confident Ash is one of the traitors. And Ross, I think, was talking to a little group, including his mum, Diane, and he said, oh, his mum's Sunday roasts are not good. And I think that's when Diane was like, well, you know, if you want to come round to mine, I'll make you a Sunday roast. And he was like, well, yeah, you know, if you're offering, making out that they're not actually mother and son, but obviously they are mother and son. Paul explained to Zach that people in here haven't changed a bit. So I think he was trying to give Zach a compliment here by basically saying, you haven't changed. But he kind of wasn't really letting Paul speak. He was kind of not speaking over him, but like Paul was trying to give him some compliments, and then Zach kept coming out with his weird sentences or jokes or trying to be funny. But he basically said, look, people in here haven't changed a bit, like yourself, you're a smart lad. And obviously sometimes you just say things that are a little bit out of context or whatever. And then Charlotte came in and was like, oh, look, we've got roast. And then I think as a joke, Zach said, oh, here you go, look, the final supper, your final supper, or something like that, because it was roast dinner. And yeah, I guess Charlotte at that point was a bit like, wow, that was a bit rude. I don't know if he actually said your final dinner or your last dinner or your last supper, or whether he just said it could be the last supper. So I don't know if she completely took that out of context. And then, yeah, she basically said that Zach was a massive red flag for her. Harry explained again that all of the chat that other people are having amongst themselves are actually making him feel a lot better, because then it means the radar's off him, people don't think he's a traitor, and you know, people are focusing on people who are actually going to be helpful in the game. So if you're going to just get rid of your own people, it makes it easier for the traitors to win later on. And Jasmine basically said to Zach that she was happy that they both got a shield, but she did explain to him that he was rubbing people the wrong way. Not her, sorry. So she said he wasn't doing anything to offend her or, you know, get under her skin, but there were some people that obviously are not happy or don't appreciate the way that he, I guess, is playing the game. And he basically said that he felt like he was going to have a lot of targets on him at the round table. So I guess he just had to be careful, but that is just the way that he is. He makes jokes, he's funny, he comes up with these like one-liners or, you know, giggles at everything, like nervous laughing. So, you know, this sort of thing happens, and I guess people have different ways of dealing with things. Miles had a chat with Johnny, and Johnny basically said that Ash's name's been mentioned quite a lot of times. I think here Miles said to the camera that the fact that Ash's name has been brought up again, he has to kind of make out that he doesn't really know what's going on, and to not make a reaction of like, oh god, like she's one of us. So he kind of was just like, oh, you know, I've kind of heard that. I'm not too sure, I'm not as close to her as I am with some of the other people, but I kind of think I've heard that. And he basically said at the round table, she's probably going to be questioned quite a lot. Again, Diane and Tracy, two of the older ladies, they basically said that they would potentially both go for Ash. And although Diane doesn't like Anthony, she's not going to bring up his name at the round table just because she's already done that once and she needs to have numbers on her side, but she's going to keep an eye on Anthony. And Tracy said, yeah, I'm going to have his name in the back of my head as well. Evie also said that, yeah, in order to vote for someone, you do need to have backing. So I think Evie was kind of involved in the conversation as well. They basically said that Ash is intelligent, and Evie said to Diane that, you know, Ash was always asking her lots of times who she would vote for and, you know, what her kind of game plan is. And Diane said, well, you know, she doesn't speak to me. And Evie said, okay, well, it's probably because she's scared of you. So I think there's some sort of, not conflict, but some sort of disagreement or whatever between Ash and Diane, that because they're such powerful women, they know that each other potentially could be a traitor. Obviously, Ash knows Diane isn't, and Diane definitely thinks Ash is. So whoever takes out the other one first, then you'll see which allies go which way, and, you know, how the game goes from there. So yeah, either one of them will go at some point. I don't think either of them will win. I think they will both get knocked out at some point, just because they're both too fiery and feisty. But you never know. One of them could go, and then the other group has a massive like flux of allyship. So just never know what's going to happen. And Anthony kind of explained before the round table, there was a lot of shots fired. Ross said most important thing was getting the traitors out. Harry said if the heat comes onto them, they obviously know what they have to do. And Ash said that nobody suspects anything about them yet, but obviously that's not true because people are suspecting her straight away. When it came to the round table, Brian, photographer, went first. So this is Brian the sheep. He said, I'm going to address the sheep in the room. Obviously he addressed the elephant in the room, but everyone thought he was the sheep. And he basically said, obviously, want to start the round table soft and then we can all kill each other afterwards. I think he basically said, I guess I may come across a bit quiet or whatever, but I don't think that was a fair judgment to make because everyone was so equal the following day, or the previous day, sorry, that everyone was kind of saying similar things, or everyone was in a similar mindset. So the fact that he's been put at the bottom as if like he's the weakest player, he obviously wasn't very happy with that. And then straight away we had Zach and Charlotte have a chat, and I think Zach basically said here, well, if we are going to start like digging at people, try not to make it personal. And then Charlotte was like, well, actually on that point, Zach, in terms of making it personal, I think you may potentially will have got the shield to deflect from the fact that you're actually a traitor. So she just basically went straight in at him saying, look, you basically said that you were going to go for the gold, you were going to help us with the team challenge, and then surprisingly, just randomly out of the blue, you decided to go for the shield, not really sure why. And then he kind of had a bit of a nervous giggle. And then Miles joined in and said, well, actually, adding on to that, like, Zach laughing, obviously him not matching people's energy, is that just the way he is, or maybe he's nervous, or maybe he's got other things on his mind, like the traitor things. And Zach basically said, that's just how I am, I can't help it, I am just a nervous person, and it's just nervous energy to kind of protect myself. Jasmine said that she was quite suspicious of Brian, that he was very jittery, he was trying to hide from something. And Johnny said that actually, complete opposite, he felt like Brian was really nervous at the beginning and now he's starting to become a lot more confident. And Brian's response to that was, well, okay, if you start a new job, you're going to be nervous. Once you get to know who's on your team, you get an understanding for who they are, you get more confident. And Charlotte was like, actually, yeah, that's a good point. So I think they all kind of realised at that point, like, yes, you can be nervous, but once you get to know people, once you get to understand the game a bit better, then yeah, you're not going to be shy. Charlie said to Diane, obviously this was a point that she was going to bring up, but confused about why she was cheering when Sonia was banished from the game, and Diane basically just said that she got carried away. So, you know, she knew that Sonia was a faithful, and she just wanted to make sure that Sonia was a faithful, so she cheered because she was correct. Yes, I guess it's a little bit out of place, but she just wanted to know that she was right about Sonia, so she can obviously people read. It just, yeah, came across a little bit weird. And even Ross, so obviously her son, and I think a couple of the other boys basically said that Diane did try and apologise. She did go around and apologise to some of the people that obviously Sonia was close to, so yeah, she should basically be left out of the firing line for that, because yeah, she did something wrong, but she backed herself up and apologised for that. And this is when Paul basically said that he felt like the louder people were leaving the group, so people should go for those who are a little bit quieter. I don't know here if he was kind of hinting for people to go towards like Ash or Meg or Jazz. Obviously they were the quieter ones, but I guess he's put quiet people as something in people's heads. So they're going to go, okay, right, loud people, we'll leave them alone. We'll go for the quiet ones this time. And he basically said, well, actually, Jazz, you've been quite quiet. And then I think a few people were like, okay, do you want to stick up for yourself? And he said, no, I have no need to respond to that because I know I'm a faithful. So I think the fact that he's so confident that he doesn't need to respond to that just shows that he's a genuine guy. Like, he's there to play the game. He doesn't need to get into all this drama of having to back yourself up and having to, you know, pretend that you have to, like, make a case for yourself when there's just no need for that. And Paul was the only one that thought Jazz potentially could have been a traitor, and it was just his opinion that it potentially would be the quiet ones. So yeah, didn't really change much there, just opened the conversation to a potentially new lead. Ross said, well, going on from what Paul said, people under the radar are sometimes the ones that potentially could be a traitor, and that would be a very good game move. So he said Meg, again, she's one of the quieter characters in the game, and she basically said that she's not a confident speaker, she's not naturally good at, like, you know, talking in front of crowds, so she doesn't really have to back or defend herself either. She just knows that's not her vibe, but she knows she's truthful, she knows she's a faithful. And then I think at this point Jasmine jumped in and was like, well, actually, if you can't have a case to back yourself up, like, you can't all just say I'm quiet and I can't, like, speak to people or whatever. You have to back yourself up, otherwise it just comes across really suspicious. So, you know, both Meg and Jazz there kind of targeted for being quiet, but are they quiet and just faithful, or quiet and potentially scheming traitors? Tracy then pulled out another name, so she pulled out Ash, and you see all of the reactions from the other three traitors, Miles, Harry and Paul, a bit like, oh god, her name's been pulled out, like, what do we do? And she basically said that Ash was chatting to everyone and asking people who the traitors were and who they were going to vote for, and they kind of game plan and stuff. So the fact that she said that she's spoken to everybody, and then this is when Ash said, yeah, I've spoken to everybody, but I haven't really spoken to Diane. And then Tracy kind of said, well, hang on, you just said you've spoken to everybody and now you're saying you haven't? And she's like, no, I've tried to speak to everybody. So she's kind of getting a bit mumbled on her words here. And yeah, Evie also jumped in and said, well, hang on, you said you've spoken to everybody? So again, a couple of the girls battling here with Ash. And yeah, Tracy was just like, well, hang on, you've just contradicted yourself. So yeah, that was kind of a weird thing of Ash being like, no, that's just my personality, that's just me, I talk to people, like, if anything, it gives me faithful vibes, the fact that I'm actually trying to network with people and trying to make connections with people. I'm not trying to be friends with everyone, just trying to get round to everyone, get to know people, people's stories, and that kind of thing. And then a very weird way to end the round table, I'm not sure why he did this, but Brian just said, I want to be selfish for a moment, and I just want to ask who thinks that I'm not a traitor. It was a bit of a weird, I don't know, I feel like I've had this sort of moment before, like, I completely understand where Brian's coming from. Like, he basically tried to explain a point, he couldn't get his words out, he couldn't explain himself properly, and he basically just said, I just want to know who thinks I'm not a traitor. And then I think someone just jumped in and said, well, hang on, you're now making it all about yourself, like, if anything, that is now a traitor. You're kind of giving off, like, traitor vibes, the fact that you're trying to deflect and defend yourself by asking the entire room openly, who doesn't trust me? So he tried to explain his case of this is what I meant, and he couldn't really get his words out, and then he basically just said there's obviously something in the room that, you know, threw him off of him trying to make a point, and then he just kind of went, he just wasn't able to get his words out. And then obviously Claudia was like, right, that's the end of the chat. A couple of them started laughing, a bit like, what the hell's gone on? He just put his hand on his head, and it was just a bit of a weird vibe. Obviously I understand some of the others that have targets on their back, but Brian just non-intentionally put a target on his own back. So as of now, I don't know if he's actually been eliminated from the game. As of now, I just know there are a few people that are obviously now a bit suspicious of him, just purely because he was trying to get a point out, and he just, again, similarly to what Zach said, just got a bit nervous, got a bit giggly, got a bit jittery, and that's just the kind of person he was. When it came to the votes, again, I'm not gonna read through who voted for who. I'm just gonna read out how many votes everyone got. So we went round. There was obviously 18 votes. 4, 8, 12, 15. There's 19 votes. So there was 1 vote for Anthony, 1 vote for Jazz, 1 vote for Paul, 1 vote for Meg, 3 votes for Zach. So we got very, very lucky to only get 3. But but Diane, Brian, and Ash all got 4 votes. So basically everyone had to vote again, but they could only vote for Ash, Brian, or Diane for who they thought was a traitor. But Ash, Brian, and Diane couldn't vote themselves, and they couldn't vote at all. But before they went around and did the votes, they had to kind of do a final plea as to why people shouldn't vote them out, why they are not a traitor. And I think at this point, Paul looked at Harry, made sure no one else looked at the two of them. Paul kind of raised his eyebrows as in like, we discussed our plan kind of thing. And Harry basically said, Paul looked at me, gave me eye contact. He knew we did what we needed to do in order to protect the traitors. And this is where they slyly went against Ash. So I think at this point, because she's been on so many people's radars, there's a lot of people that are like, potentially Ash, potentially Ash, potentially Ash. You just have to kind of get rid of her, because I guess when she goes, the rest of them have to act as if they're not traitors and be like, yes, we've got a traitor out, and also remain undetected. But if she's on their team as a traitor and they vote for her, she's going to turn on them. So there's not really a traitors team. It's a very weird dynamic. So they have to get her out before she gets an alliance and a crowd, and they get knocked out themselves. So yeah, when they did their little pleas, Ash basically said it does feel weird to be nominated, and her aim of the game is just to get to know people and their opinions. Brian said he didn't expect to react like this at the table. He's crumbling a little bit. And I think he just, I guess he was just a bit like, I don't really know what else to say. I want to play the game, I want to have fun, and I've just kind of messed it up for myself. And then Diane said she couldn't be a traitor. She wouldn't even remember half the lies that she's mentioned. She said she's a menopausal woman as well, so she's obviously got that lady stuff to deal with, and she speaks her mind, and she's truthful, so obviously therefore she's a faithful. When it came to the votes, Diane got 3 votes, Ash got 6, Brian got 6, but we had 1 final vote to reveal from Anthony, but this hasn't been revealed in episode 3, so we actually don't know if Anthony voted for Diane, Ash, or Brian. If he votes for Diane, it doesn't make a difference. We vote again for Ash and Brian. If he's voted for Ash, Ash is out. If he's voted for Brian, then Brian's out. So I think at this point, the best thing to do in the game is to get rid of Ash, just because, yes, she's a traitor, but like Paul mentioned, she hasn't stepped up to being a traitor that well, because if anything, she's kind of just ended up getting herself detected by just being really, obviously not a faithful. So yeah, the team are obviously a little bit like, yeah, we need to get our own traitor out, because otherwise it's gonna, it's gonna potentially hurt the traitors team if she stays, because then she's against them and they're against her. If she stays, she'll question them why they all voted for her. So it's a very, like she mentioned, they've only been doing the traitor's job for about 2 nights, and they've already turned against her purely because she's weak as a traitor. So yeah, that's where we kind of ended episode 3. So if you did enjoy my review, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And until my next review, thank you for watching, and goodbye.